Hi, everybody. This is Addison Shonland. It is March 25, 2022, and I'm back with the top team in Sarin Company in India. Gentlemen, thank you so much for spending some time with me to catch up again.
Thank you for having us, Addison.
So
it's our pleasure.
Let's catch up on Indian news. There's been a kerfuffle of information and news about Air India and wide bodies. And of course, I've been watching with great interest friends and colleagues on social media talking about the 350 show and tell this week.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What do you guys know? And I saw, Nitin, I saw you fussing around the E2. You didn't buy one, did you?
No, I did not. But as far as the Airbus goes, I hope that we see some new order from either Vistara or Air India, or I mean, whatever they might become in the future. So it's a big hodgepodge at the moment. But we are hopeful that there will be some announcement of an order soon.
And it's 350 versus 777X?
Well, no one's really, I mean, to the best of my knowledge, no one is really even talking about the 777X. I could be totally wrong.
Right, because there was I think another delay announced today. The FAA
Possibly.
FAA is pushing back on the MAX 10, and also potentially that's going to push back the X certification.
Well, possibly. I think both manufacturers are in a tight sort of situation. Boeing possibly more. Airbus has issues with its paint, but again, presumably they are very desperate for an order from India, and it is ripe for a large order from India at the moment.
Vinny, anything to add?
Yeah, I guess the Air India 777s, despite the fact that they're owned by the airline, they're now getting to the point where they need to look for replacements. So at this point in time, if I was an airline, the 787s are not being delivered. We don't really know when the deliveries will start, and as and when they start, there's a backlog. So that's not really an option at this point in time. You look at the 777X, well, that's delay central, let's be honest. So we don't really know when those are going to be available. Emirates is, they've gone on record to state that, they're not very happy with the 777X, and now they're having to extend leases on the 777 fleet and obviously keep some of the 380s longer, just because they don't know when the 777X is going to come online. So if I was an operator, when the next generation, so to speak, aircraft from Boeing, well, we don't know when the 777X is coming, and as far as the 787 goes, it's in a bit of a limbo, so you don't really have an option. The only other aircraft that you can look at is the 330 and the 330 Neo, which hasn't really sold as many, or the 350. So, despite the paint issues, the 350 is flying, and it seems to be fairly successful as far as economics go. So I think the choice is really, it's honestly, they don't really have a choice. So I think I won't say imminent, but it's evident that should an airline want to order a wide body, long range aircraft today, given the circumstances, it would in all likelihood be the A350. Not sure which variant or a mix of two, the 900 or the 1000, but it would be the A350.
Agreed.
Right, that's a fair way of putting it. Very diplomatically put, but
yeah. Well, I guess I've learned from the best. I work with
you must work for a law firm.
I know, right? I work with the world's best aviation lawyers, so I guess I'm learning from the best. So that's a compliment for him, actually, to be honest.
Well, I don't deserve it. A single tear rolled down my cheek. But no, but I agree with you. I agree with you because, no, for everything you said. And just Boeing has not been able to deliver them fast enough. And unfortunately, in this part of the world, we need that capacity very quickly. But I agree with you.
so it's interesting. I did a story yesterday about Alaska Airlines has now formally made the statement that they're going to be all Boeing. That is to say, all Boeing except Embraer. But they're going to get rid of the Dash 8s, and they're going to get rid of the last 10 321 Neos that they have, which are left over from Virgin America days. And those airplanes, the 321 Neos, are all LEAP powered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I was looking at where would those airplanes go? That they are all leased, so they are, shall we say, liquid.
Mm-hmm.
And if you wanted to get rid of an airplane these days, that's the best one to get rid of, because there's like a waiting list for those. And I noticed something interesting, that India has a small, but I think strong and growing interest in upsizing. And that 321 Neo might just end up, I'm just thinking that they could, some of them or all of them could actually end up in India because of the growth there.
Let me just put that into perspective. So I'm taking Indigo as example. One would think from an Indian perspective, oh, they have 5, they have 10, they have 15. No, they have a huge amount of 321 Neos. I live in a small town which is which is about 1 million people. We have 4 A320 Neos flying to Delhi and back every day. We have, I think there are 3 flights to Mumbai where one is at least a 321 Neo, which, I mean, and it switches between all 3 being 321. It's crazy. I agree with you. I think that the 321 in India has found some sort of sweet spot, at least with Indigo. But then I will not make Indigo the norm because they're very smart and they're very good.
Right. But the thing is that the 321 Neo just seems to be like an airplane that can do, let me rephrase that, it can be abused. You can do local hops, the domestic service. And I'm not saying that I mean, India is big, physically big. So there's hours of between origin and destination, but you could easily use that airplane to fly to Dubai. Yeah. Fly east further to all kinds of places. You could fly south. I mean, that airplane has a tremendous, there's tremendous capabilities. I've been watching with great interest people like Air Portugal using that airplane to fly from Lisbon to Washington, D.C.
Yeah. You see,
this is not a popular thing to say, but it is a replacement for the 757. So, which had more or less the same ability.
Right.
You see, in my opinion, as far as the 321 up gauge goes, it makes complete sense because pre-COVID and starting the summer schedule, we're a country where most of our tier 1 airports are packed. We have slot constraints during the peak morning and evening hours. And that is when the 321 makes complete sense, because you get those extra 20, 30, 35 odd seats with essentially by using the same slot. So, I mean, Air India, to be honest, to give them credit, were the first ones really in India to order the 321 and, bring the 321 in. And at that point in time, we weren't really the world's 3rd largest aviation market, and everybody thought it was a bit of an overkill. But you see, Indigo's obviously graduated onto the A321. And coming back to those 321s, the ex-Virgin America ones, which the most of them are leased from a lessor. You see, why I feel they might not end up in India is because our airlines basically order a huge bunch of aircraft and then enter into sale and leaseback deals, because every sort of deal unlocks value. And that is a couple of $1 million, which sort of helps them, tide over operational sort of losses or challenges in India. So, I mean, I don't, there's Go Air, they don't even have a single A321 Neo. If my memory serves me right, they haven't ordered a single one. Indigo has a huge backlog, so I don't see them getting any. And I guess Air India is not ordering any aircraft, well, at least not narrow body aircraft. And if they do, they'll obviously order a huge bunch, which will be delivered in due course. So,
Right.
so they might not make their way to India, but then this is the aviation industry. Things change overnight.
Right.
So you never know.
You know, if I were the lessor, they were all with Goshawk, but they've now, sorry, all with GCAS, and now they've all moved to other places. Many of them have moved to other places. The interesting thing here is, if you were looking for, you know, where would you find a ready market? Maybe China. You know, I don't know in the US where those would go. American uses that airplane, a LEAP powered 321, and Delta's now taking delivery this week of their first 321 Neo, but that's GTF powered. So anyway, that's just a thought that crossed my mind when we were talking about the refleeting and the wide body situation. How do you see the domestic traffic in India? Is there any impact from, for example, the fuel spike, which seems to have gone up and now it might be coming down again?
Well, I mean, I see we've reached about 80% of pre-COVID levels, passenger levels in India, which is a good thing. We haven't really been able to cross the 400,000 passengers a day mark yet. And that's probably got to do with the fact that India still continues to have fare caps in place. And that means that, you know, last minute discounting currently is not possible. So as it stands, airlines cannot discount an airplane ticket within 15 days of departure. So, you know, as soon as you get into the 15-day D- 15-day period, you cannot discount. You've got to follow the designated fare caps. And that's where, you know, probably we find that, you know, we're not being able to put as many people on the aircraft as we would like to, because ideally these planes should be packed. So I mean, the fuel price is a worry for every airline in the world, more so for ours, because the margins here are so poor. I mean, they're so slim that even a fraction of rise in costs, airlines aren't really able to make up for that in increased revenue in any which way, really. So yes, I mean, I don't see our airlines making any money. So as I would like to call this profitless growth. So the planes are packed. We're averaging 85% plus load factors for all airlines. But in my opinion, I don't think anybody is making any money. But I guess that probably is the case with most airlines at this point in time, given the circumstances and the price of oil.
So the price of oil, I read something quite interesting that it looks like India might do a deal with Russia on discounted oil. Obviously, the Russians are trying to trade with anybody who will buy anything that they sell, and they don't sell much. But oil is one thing they do sell, energy input. So clearly that would be an attraction for India. India's still trading with Russia, right?
Yes,
Yep.
I mean, let me give you a perspective. So I was on an aircraft a couple of days ago with possibly one of the largest watch dealers in the country. And I mean watch dealers, an authorized dealer, where they were very interested in getting the whole share of allocation of watches from Russia to India. And the message was very clear that if it's business, they you know, we're not interested in what's happening in politics. As far as business is concerned, because we have no embargo at the moment, they will, you know, follow business economics. Now that's the business point of view. I understand that. We have a very strong political angle to this also, where, you know, traditionally we've seen the Russians as allies. So it's a very difficult position for our government to be in, where there's no right or wrong. And at the same time, we have to keep everyone happy. And yes, we have huge amounts of requirements of oil. And if you're getting it at a discount, well and good. If now, please, now this is my balancing factor for whatever I've just said.
I can sense that you're walking on the knife edge here.
I am. If that means for any reason we are sanctioned by any country, I'm not talking about the United States, it's not worth it, in my opinion. It's not worth it because it's not our conflict. So that's, that's my personal opinion of this. It's a very, very thin line. We are, as you rightly say, we're walking on a knife.
Yeah, I mean, and just to sort of digress from oil, because Nitin's covered it beautifully and diplomatically, and I wouldn't be able to do such a good job. I talk about the Russian airspace, okay? So at this point in time, as it stands, the US airlines, a whole bunch of them fly nonstop to India. United's had to cancel their nonstop flight from San Francisco to Delhi because they can't use the Russian airspace anymore. They've had to cancel their New Jersey Mumbai flight, which is a daily flight and very popular, goes out packed and comes in packed from what I hear. So American Airlines, well, they started flights from New York JFK to Delhi, and they were never given Russian overflight rights. So I guess it doesn't really make any difference to American because they never had them. So they were using this detour over Eastern Europe and down into the Stans into India since they started flying. But you see, this is where geopolitics and the world that we live in it impacts everyone, but it impacts the aviation industry so much more. So, you could depart on a flight at the same time from New Delhi. You could be on an Air India flight, which will take you to New York JFK with overflying over Russia, and just use the Great Circle route and get you into JFK. And then you can get on an American Airlines flight, which would in all likelihood be diverted to Bangor because it's been diverting for so many days because of obviously winds and the fact that they've got to take the longer way back to the US. And I guess, you see, airlines or the industry has little to do with this because we are not decision makers. And I say we because Nitin and I work in the industry, and so are you associated with the industry. The airlines and the aviation industry never really make these decisions, but they always bear the brunt of it. And that is where I guess exactly, and that's where I guess and between the airlines too, it's so tricky. Does Air India take a stand? Well, I mean, on what's happening in our world, well, I guess they will just, they'll do what the government of India they'll take the stand which the government of India has taken. You see what I mean? So it's just a very, very tricky sort of situation to be in, and I guess it's a strange world, is what I'd like to say.
If I can just add one more angle of perspective, why a common man Indian would not be fazed by all of this is, Vin and I traveled to Russia in October last year. We were treated more like royals than all the Europeans who were on our flight. It's so strange how geopolitics works, where we are, and okay, put this into perspective. I land in Amsterdam, 9 times out of 10, I will have a very hostile officer looking at my passport, asking me questions about, and making me feel fairly uncomfortable about the fact that I'm coming to a particular country. Whereas once they see all the stamps in my passport, they'll understand that I have no interest in living there. But that's not the norm, because when they see an Indian passport, they assume that it's going to be someone who's there for illegal gain or to move on wherever they want. Russia was the only country which welcomed us with open arms. I have never experienced that anywhere apart from Indonesia. That's the only other country where I felt the same amount of hospitality, well, if that's a term, when I landed on those shores. And it's, people have called me oversensitive, but I am a big traveler, and I judge places where I land according to how I'm treated by the customs officer. It may be a small deal, but for me, it's a big thing in my head.
But it's the first impression.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there are very few countries in the world that treated us the way Russia treated us. Okay, leaving Russia was a different ball game, where they did interrogate us as to how much money we're leaving with. That's a different thing. But when we entered, we were welcomed with open arms, which I have never experienced in my life before.
Yeah, no, and even just before you depart India, when you go to apply for a visa, I mean, I've just applied for a 10-year UK visa, and I've paid £900 in visa fees for a
What?
10-year visa. I mean,
Yep.
yes, that's how much Indians are required to pay to get a 10-year long-term UK visa. And just so you know, there are no guarantees that I'd get a 10-year visa. I could pay for a 10-year visa. Should they not find my application credible enough, they can give me a 2-year one or a 5-year one and not return the rest of the money. So,
Yep.
and I mean, it's not the same with the US, where it's not as much, where you pay, I think it's about 10,000 Indian rupees now. And the US is very liberal with granting visas. If they find you credible, they just give you a 10-year one. I'm sure Nitin and I have had multiple 10-year ones. I'm in my second 10-year visa, US visa, which was renewed. So,
Wow.
but you see, with Russia, I mean, we got our visas in 3 days, no questions asked. We entered the country, we were treated as if we were friends, and
Yep.
and that just makes so much of a difference. We're professionals who are part of the industry, and yet as soon as they see an Indian passport, they're like, oh well, we'd want to question you, or we'll look at you with a certain degree of suspicion, maybe. So so that's when you see, our trip to Russia was amazing. I mean, we were treated honestly like royalty, not just even by our Russian hosts. They went above and beyond to make sure that we were comfortable, because we came from a country where they have historical ties, and there's just so much love between the people. So and I guess, it's hard to understand for someone in the West, or someone who's not experienced this or not aware of this.
Yeah.
So that's why, there are multiple dimensions to I mean, strangely, something's happening so far away from where you are and from where we are, and yet we're discussing it on an important call, because it impacts the industry that we work in.
Yeah.
So crazy, but I guess so it is what it is.
Very interesting perspective. Obviously, in the US where I am, the situation is black and white. There is no gray. There is absolutely no gray. And for those in the US who try to walk that knife edge, everybody's ready to push them onto the blade. There are people in Congress who are saying strange things, and they're vilified. They're vilified.
I mean,
and this is supposedly the country of free thought. But for the American way, I guess, right now internally here, it's a black and white situation. Russia is bad. Ukraine is being destroyed by evil, and any other position is like I said, vilified.
Again, it's I agree with you. And at the end of the day, it's all perspective, right? It's all perspective.
I mean, like, I'll be honest with you, I'm the most black and white person in the world. Like, I rarely do shades in gray. I honestly, and I think that's something that I need to work on, but I can't do gray.
He doesn't. I testify to that, but he doesn't do that. But it's a difficult situation to be in. And even if you talk about geopolitics, people are now all of a sudden talking about stands taken by the Ukraine against India in the United Nations. So while I disagree with that 500% on a humanitarian and a social point of view, I put myself in that position as if I lived in a developed country and some third party is attacking me. In 2022, that's not done. Disagree with me. That's just not done. You don't do that. From a political point of view, we don't support it. We don't say anything else. I mean, it's a very difficult situation to be in. There's no right or wrong. It's borderline everything being wrong, to be honest.
Right. Well, I think that's the tragedy here. As we started this particular part of the conversation, Vinny, you made a great point, which it's impacting everybody.
Yes.
It's going to impact food supplies. It's already affected energy supply. And no one is going to win out of this. And as messy as it is, and as friendly as India and Russia have been, bad news is coming.
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys get, or I don't know what India's imports look like from Russia by way of wheat. but a third of the world, maybe more than a third of the world's wheat supply is up for grabs right now. It's just not going to happen. Now what? It's horrific.
Yeah, it's just, you see, the world is such a connected place now. We're not like when the Second World War happened. I mean, it's just look at the industry we work in, aviation finance. These are mobile assets flying around the world. I mean, you see, an aircraft could depart Delhi and then end up in Dubai and then go on to Europe, or just fly over multiple jurisdictions and end up in the US. So, the world is so connected, and everyone's going to be impacted by something, by whatever happens. And obviously what is happening in Eastern Europe is going to impact all of us.
It's interesting. Go ahead.
Though very interestingly, sorry, just to touch upon what Vin said, very interestingly, this is going to lead to a battle between the lessors and insurance companies. Lessors are going to be the first ones to jump on the fact saying, oh, it's a total loss, wanting to get whatever they paid for the aircraft without any loss of life, without having to deal with return conditions. And the insurance companies are going to be fighting that. So it does throw up a whole different ballgame where at the end of the day, aviation is money. Money is key, and that's what people are going to fight about. So
it's interesting you bring that up, Nitin, because I've been trying to see who I could get to talk in the leasing world about this, and no surprise, no takers. No one wants to talk about it.
Well, a very close friend of mine who works with a leasing company once said that the ideal scenario for us is a plane crash where it's a total write-off. There's no loss of life, but we get whatever we have insured the aircraft for. That's the ideal outcome for an aircraft lessor, because they don't have to deal with the asset. They get that whole money back. And I'm surprised why this doesn't happen more often, because that is really a win-win situation for aircraft lessors.
Right. This particular situation is going to become terribly messy. No spare parts. Yes. Now, it's interesting. There was talk about Indian companies, MROs maybe, or helping, shall we say, to get spare parts into Russia. But I don't think anybody would take that risk.
Disagree. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. 110% if that happened. Please do bear in mind, 99% of our fleet is leased. We will not be so stupid to do that.
No, it's not the Indian airlines, but MROs.
If I had to transfer you $100 tomorrow, I have to file more paperwork than it does, to transfer you $150,000. So imports and exports from India is a very difficult subject. It is not that easy. The Indian government will not possibly allow that so easily, because we are a highly, highly, highly exchange controlled country. Everything is scrutinized from the point of view of export as well as import. So I highly doubt that would happen.
And I guess more importantly, that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is all OEMs, and the two large OEMs are from the European Union and the US. They've sanctioned Russia. Anybody sort of assisting Russian airlines would have to bear the brunt of their actions. So I honestly do not see anybody being able to. So, I mean, you get your parts from the OEMs, right? If you start helping airlines in a country which has been so vastly sanctioned, I don't see how that would not damage the MRO's relationship with OEMs. So I think in today's day and age, in any business, and leave alone just aviation, it's more about the relationships that you have. So right. I do not think anybody would want to jeopardize their relationship with an OEM over a couple of $1 million in parts, should it ever come to that. So I don't see that happening.
Well, in that case, I'm going to just mention, I'll just throw in one word here and see how you guys react. Iran.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They've always been our friends. We've used oil from Iran for years. It's strange that we've had strong cultural ties with them for many, many years. And again, possibly another country where we'd be welcomed with open arms I think it's visa free for us.
Well, one
No,
second. When
and-
I mentioned that word, I mean that word as in, where do you think they get all their spare parts from? Particularly for things
They
like the
cannibalize. No, they cannibalize
One
other
second.
aircraft.
1 second. The 321, what are they cannibalizing from? The ATR, what are they cannibalizing from? The 330, what are they cannibalizing from? The 340-600, where are the cannibalizing coming from? There's murky water there, and I'm not suggesting that
Well,
India's involved, but there's murky
Yes.
water there.
There's definitely murky water there, and we're not entering the whole world of PMA parts, which we do know exists, but at least India is not a part to, other PMA parts. We do not manufacture other parts. So
Right.
I can speak for other countries who may invest a lot of money in those sorts of things, but India's biggest downfall has been that it's a democracy. It's been the biggest success has been that it's a democracy, which disallows things like that. So I would be fairly confident in believing that we would be incapable of doing that, even if we wanted to.
Fascinating. Anything else, gentlemen? I'm sure you want to go enjoy your weekend.
Yes,
No, I think that-
absolutely. Unless you have something else that you'd want us to discuss.
You know these conversations, Vinny, we could go like all weekend, but
Absolutely.
everybody has a life.
That's true. Yeah, I not so much, but yeah, I guess everybody else does.
Thank you so much for your time, gents.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us. It's
Until
always a
next time.
pleasure.